voicemail came in at 6:12 a.m., 36 hours before my wedding. It was from my mother, Evelyn Carter, and she sounded calm in the way people do when they have already made a decision that will ruin someone else's life. "Maya," she said, using my full name like she was reading it off a legal document. "We need to talk today. There's been a change regarding the ceremony." I stared at my phone for a full minute before I breathed again. Nothing good ever followed the words, "There's been a change in my family." Before I tell you what she took from me, pause here for a second. If you've ever been excluded, sidelined, or quietly erased by people who were supposed to protect you, stay with me. Like the story. Subscribe if you're listening to this somewhere public. And if something in this already feels familiar, you're not alone. I didn't color back right away. I already knew what was coming. In my family, bad news always arrived dressed as logistics. At 29 years old, I was a senior operations analyst at a logistics firm in Chicago, managing a team of 12 and overseeing contracts worth north of $8 million annually. I paid my own rent, my own insurance, my own student loans. I hadn't needed my parents financially since I was 22, but emotional independence is harder when the people who raised you still think they own the narrative. My father, Thomas Carter, believed families worked best when one voice spoke and everyone else adjusted. That voice was his. My mother enforced it with smiles and scheduling, and my younger sister, Lauren Carter, benefited from it quietly. I drove to my parents' house in Naperville that morning, the same brick colonial I grew up in. The one where my bedroom had been turned into a Peloton room the year after I moved out. Lauren's car was already there. That should have been my first warning. Inside, my mother was at the kitchen island with her planner open. My father sat at the table, glasses on, scrolling through his phone. Lauren leaned against the counter, arms crossed, already watching me like she knew something I didn't. "Maya," my mother said. "Sit." I didn't. "What changed?" I asked. My mother exhaled. "Your grandmother's will was finalized last night." That was not what I expected. My grandmother, Ruth Carter, had been hospitalized 2 weeks earlier after a stroke. She was 87, sharp as a tack, and had personally helped me pay for my first certification exam when my parents said it wasn't necessary. "And?" I said. My father looked up then. "The wedding needs to reflect the family situation." There it was. The sentence that meant everything and nothing at once. Lauren finally spoke. "Grandma wants things traditional." I looked at her. Grandma hasn't spoken since the stroke. Lauren's jaw tightened, just slightly. My mother stepped in smoothly. "Your grandmother always believed the eldest daughter should take responsibility, not attention." That was new. And it was a lie. "What exactly are you saying?" I asked. My father folded his hands. "Lauren will be walking down the aisle with me." The room went quiet. I laughed once, because the alternative was throwing something. "You're joking," I said. "It makes sense," Lauren said quickly. "You already have so much, Maya. The career, the apartment downtown, the independence. This is just one day." One day. That phrase again. "I'm the one getting married," I said, "not Lauren." My mother closed her planner. "You'll still be there, of course, but appearances matter. With your grandmother's estate being redistributed, we need to avoid unnecessary tension." Redistributed. I felt something shift then. Something cold and precise. "Say it plainly," I said. "Use real words." My father didn't hesitate. "You've been removed from the will." Lauren inhaled sharply, like she hadn't expected him to say it that bluntly. My mother rushed in. "Temporarily. And only because you've chosen a life path that doesn't align with the family business." The family business. A regional construction supply company I had never worked for, never been offered a role in, never been consulted about. "You mean because I didn't marry someone you approved of?" I said. My father stood. "This isn't about your fiancé, Daniel Reyes." I smiled without warmth. "Then why is his last name suddenly relevant?" Silence again. "Here's the part people don't understand about the trail. It's not loud. It's administrative. It happens over kitchen counters and legal language, and people pretending they're being reasonable." "You're excluding me," I said slowly. "From the will. From my own wedding. And you're calling it tradition." My mother's eyes softened. "We're protecting the family." Lauren wouldn't meet my gaze. I realized then that this wasn't spontaneous. This had been discussed, planned, decided. Without me. A memory surfaced, uninvited. I was 12, standing in the hallway while Lauren was praised for a piano recital I'd been forced to skip for a debate competition no one attended. I remembered the feeling. The shrinking. I didn't feel that now. I won't fight you, I said. They all looked surprised. But I won't participate either. My father frowned. Don't be dramatic. I won't attend the rehearsal dinner, I continued. I won't walk behind my sister like a guest at my own wedding. And if you think this ends quietly, you're mistaken. Lauren finally looked up. What does that mean? I picked up my purse. It means you've mistaken my silence for consent for the last time. I left before they could respond. Outside, I sat in my car and let the engine run. My hands were steady. That scared me more than anger would have, because clarity had arrived. They thought removing me from an inheritance would make me fall in line. They didn't know that the only reason I'd stayed in line this long was because I thought family was something you protected, even when it hurt. That belief was about to change, and somewhere between my parents' driveway and the highway ramp, I made a decision that would cost them far more than they imagined. They just didn't know it yet. I didn't tell Daniel Reyes what happened right away, not because I was protecting my parents, and not because I was ashamed. I needed to hear the story in my own head first, without anyone softening it or reframing it for me. That's something you learn when you grow up in a family like mine. If you let them narrate events long enough, you start doubting your own memory. I drove past my apartment and kept going, ending up at a 24-hour diner off Route 59. It was the kind of place where the coffee was bad but endless, and no one asked questions if you stared into space too long. I ordered eggs I didn't eat and took out my laptop. At 30 seconds past noon, my phone buzzed. A text from my mother. We hope you'll reconsider. This is about unity. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened a folder labeled Carter Holdings. A folder I'd started years ago without realizing why. Inside were PDFs, screenshots, old emails, notes from conversations I'd overheard but never understood at the time. My grandmother, Ruth Carter, had taught me to document things quietly. Paper remembers when people pretend not to. Mini hook, though I didn't know it then. I found something I wasn't supposed to have. It was an email chain between my father, Thomas Carter, and a lawyer named Michael Henson, dated 8 months earlier. Subject line: succession adjustment. I read it once. Then again. They weren't just removing me from the will. They had already moved assets, quiet transfers, a trust renamed. My sister Lauren Carter listed as the sole beneficiary of a subsidiary company I hadn't even known existed. It wasn't about tradition. It never was. It was about control. I closed the laptop and finally called Daniel. He answered on the second ring. Hey, you okay? You were supposed to come by earlier. I need you to listen, I said. And I need you not to interrupt. He didn't. That's one of the reasons I was marrying him. I told him everything. The will, the wedding, Lauren, the way my father said it like a business decision. When I finished, there was a pause on the line. Then Daniel said, "So they're punishing you for not being manageable?" "Yes. And they think you'll comply?" "Yes." Another pause. "They don't know you very well." I smiled for the first time that day. That night, Daniel came over with takeout and a legal pad. He worked as a compliance officer for a healthcare firm. The kind of job that trained you to see risk where other people saw routine. "Let's list what they assume," he said. I picked up a pen. "They assume I won't cause a scene," I said. "They assume I care more about keeping the peace than being respected. They assume you don't have leverage," Daniel added. That word hung in the air. Leverage. My grandmother's voice echoed in my head. Never bluff unless you already know the truth. "I do have leverage," I said slowly. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "What kind?" "I helped Grandma Ruth reorganize her personal accounts 3 years ago, after Grandpa died." She didn't trust my father with the details. Daniel sat back. "Do you have documentation?" "I might." That was the moment the situation shifted from emotional to strategic. Over the next 3 days, while my family finalized seating charts and pretended nothing was wrong, I worked. Quietly. Methodically. I took time off work and drove to my grandmother's house, now empty except for a caregiver who barely looked up when I arrived. In the study, behind a row of old encyclopedias, was a locked file cabinet. The same one I'd helped her organize. The same one my father didn't know existed. Inside were original deeds, handwritten notes, and something else. A second will. Dated 6 months after the one my parents referenced. Signed, witnessed, never filed. It named me as executor. I sat on the floor and read it twice. Mini hook. Everything they told me rested on the assumption that this document didn't exist. I didn't tell Daniel yet. I needed to be certain. So I made an appointment with an estate attorney named Rachel Kim, recommended by a colleague who owed me a favor. Rachel read the will without expression. "This is valid," she said finally. "But filing it will trigger a war. I know. Your family will claim undue influence. They always do." She nodded. "And the timing? Your wedding?" I closed my eyes. "Perfect." Rachel leaned forward. "You should know something else. If your father has already moved assets under the previous will, he may be personally liable." I thought of my father's calm voice. Redistribution. Unity. "How liable?" I asked. Rachel smiled thinly, enough to make him nervous. I left her office with a plan, and a strange sense of calm. Not joy, not revenge. Just alignment. The rehearsal dinner was the following night. I arrived on time, wearing a navy dress my mother hated because it photographed too confidently. Conversations dipped when I walked in. Lauren was at the center of the room, glowing, laughing too loudly. My father spotted me and froze. "Maya," he said. "You came?" "Yes," I said. "I wanted to see everyone." My mother hugged me stiffly. "We're so glad you're here." I looked around the room. Extended family. Business associates. People who thought they knew our story. Dinner progressed awkwardly. Toasts were made. Lauren cried. Someone mentioned legacy. Halfway through dessert, my father stood to speak. "I want to thank everyone," he began. "Family is about continuity. About understanding your role." I stood too. "I agree," I said, heads turned. Daniel squeezed my hand under the table. "There's been some confusion," I continued calmly. "About rules. About decisions made without full information." My father's smile tightened. "But tonight isn't the time," I added. "Tomorrow is." A ripple moved through the room. My mother whispered, "Maya, don't." I sat back down. Later, in the parking lot, Lauren cornered me. "What are you doing?" she hissed. "You're embarrassing everyone." I looked at my sister, really looked at her. The way she stood slightly behind me. The way she waited for permission even now. "I'm telling the truth," I said. "You should ask yourself why that feels dangerous." She opened her mouth to respond, but my father appeared. "Go inside, Lauren," he said. "I'll handle this." He turned to me. "You think you can threaten us?" "No," I said. "I think I can introduce facts." His eyes narrowed. "You won't win." I smiled. "I don't need to." That night, I slept better than I had in weeks, because the next day was my wedding, and also the day I planned to file my grandmother's will. My family thought they were walking into a ceremony. They had no idea they were walking into a reckoning. The morning of my wedding arrived clear and cold, the kind of late October air that makes everything feel sharper than it should. I wake up before my alarm, fully dressed in awareness before my feet touched the floor. This wasn't nerves. This was readiness. Daniel Reyes was already up, standing by the window of the hotel suite, buttoning his shirt with the steady hands of someone he'd trusted process. He looked at me through the reflection in the glass. "You're quiet," he said. "I'm focused." He nodded. "Same thing, different cost." I smiled faintly. At 9:15, my phone buzzed. A text from Rachel Kim. "Filed. Clerk stamped. Copies secured." That was it. The second will, my grandmother Ruth Carter's real final intentions, was now a matter of public record in DuPage County. Mini hook. Everything my family had built their confidence on officially stopped existing at 9:14 a.m. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. By 10, my mother Evelyn Carter was knocking on the suite door like nothing had happened. She stepped inside, eyes scanning the room, assessing. My dress hung by the window, ivory silk, clean lines, no lace. Practical elegance. She'd never liked that about me. "You look calm," she said. "I am." She hesitated. "Your father's already downstairs, I assume." She clasped her hands. "Maya, whatever you're planning, today isn't the day." I met her gaze. "Today is exactly the day." Her mouth tightened. You don't understand the consequences. I thought of the file cabinet. The second mortgage I'd recently uncovered. The email chain with Michael Henson. I understand them better than you think, I said. She studied me. Really studied me. As if searching for the daughter who used to fold under tone aloe. She didn't find her. The ceremony venue was a restored estate just outside Oakbrook. Stone archways, manicured lawns. The kind of place my family liked because it looked expensive without being new. Guests arrived in clusters. Hugs, smiles, the soft hum of expectation. Lauren Carter stood near the front, already dressed. My father, Thomas Carter, beside her, his hand resting on her arm possessively. They looked prepared, confident. I noticed something else. Michael Henson was there. My father's lawyer stood near the aisle, whispering urgently into his phone. Minnie Hook. Lawyers don't attend weddings unless something is wrong. When the music started, the coordinator gestured for us to line up. There was a pause. Lauren looked around. Isn't Dad supposed to walk, Maya? The coordinator glanced at the clipboard, confused. My father straightened. Change of plan, he said smoothly. Lauren first. A murmur rippled through the front rows. I stepped forward before anyone could recover. No, I said. Every head turned. No, I repeated, louder. There has been no change, my mother gasped quietly. This is not the time, my father said through his teeth. I disagree. I turned to the coordinator. Proceed as planned. The coordinator hesitated. Ms. Carter, we were instructed by someone who no longer has authority, I said calmly. Michael Henson moved quickly toward us. Thomas, he hissed. We need to talk. Now. My father ignored him. You're making a scene. No, I said. I'm ending one. Rachel Kim appeared at the edge of the aisle, briefcase in hand. She hadn't been invited. She didn't need to be. She approached my father and handed him a folder. What's this? He snapped. File documentation, Rachel said evenly. You've been served. The guests leaned in, curiosity overpowering politeness. My father opened the folder. His face drained of color. Lauren whispered. Dad, this isn't possible, he said. The will was finalized. Rachel tilted her head. You're referring to the earlier version. This one supersedes it. He looked at me then. Really looked. You did this? He asked. Yes. Silence pressed down hard. This ceremony will continue, I said to the coordinator. But not under false pretenses. Michael Henson cleared his throat. Thomas, we need privacy. No, I said again. We don't. I turned to the guests. I won't take much of your time, I said. But I won't pretend today is only about celebration. It's also about truth. My mother shook her head. Maya, please. For years, I continued. Decisions about me were made without me. Today, that stops. Rachel stepped forward. Mrs. Ruth Carter's final will names Maya Carter as executor and primary beneficiary of her personal estate, including controlling interest in Carter Aggregates South. Gasps. Whispers. A cousin dropped a program. That's a mistake, Lauren said. She wouldn't. I looked at my sister. She did. And effective this morning, Rachel added. Any asset transfers made under the prior will are subject to review. My father's hand trembled. This is extortion, he said weakly. No, Rachel said. It's law. Minnie Hook. The power dynamic in the room inverted in real time. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I didn't do this to hurt anyone, I said. I did it because silence was costing me my dignity. Daniel stepped beside me, steady and present. My father looked around the room, searching for support. Found none. You embarrassed us, my mother whispered. You erased me, I replied. The officiant cleared his throat nervously. Should we proceed? I nodded. Yes. The ceremony resumed, subdued, fragile, but real. As I walked down the aisle, alone and upright, I didn't look at my father. I didn't need to. The vows were quiet, honest, anchored. When Daniel said, I choose you, I believed him. But even as the applause rose, I saw my father pull Michael Henson aside. Panic etched deep. This wasn't over. The wedding ended. The consequences were just beginning. Because once the truth is public, it doesn't go back into the envelope. And my family had just learned that I was no longer asking for permission. The reception was supposed to be celebratory. Instead, it felt like a room holding its breath. Crystal glasses clinked. A jazz trio played too softly. People smiled with the kind of stiffness reserved for funerals disguised as parties. Every conversation carried an undertone now, an awareness that something irreversible had happened in the ceremony they'd just witnessed. Daniel Reyes and I moved from table to table, thanking guests, accepting congratulations that sounded different than they had an hour earlier. Respect had replaced politeness. Curiosity hovered just beneath it. My mother, Evelyn Carter, avoided my eyes entirely. My father, Thomas Carter, didn't. He watched me like I'd stolen something from him. Something he believed had always been his. Control, maybe. Or certainty. Lauren Carter disappeared for most of dinner. When she returned, her face was blotchy, makeup hastily reapplied. She sat next to my father, not beside her fiancé. That detail didn't go unnoticed. Mini Huck. People reveal their loyalties when they think no one is watching. I excused myself midway through the salad course and stepped outside into the courtyard. Cold air steadied me. I needed a moment where no one needed anything from me. Rachel Kim joined me a few seconds later. They're scrambling, she said quietly. Michael Henson is calling in favors. I expected that. He'll try to delay probate. Question capacity. Alleged manipulation. I know. Rachel studied me. You okay? I am, I said, surprised to find it was true. But they're not done. No, she agreed. And neither are you. She left me with that. Inside, the first toast began. My father stood. That alone told me everything. He raised his glass, hand steady now, expression carefully arranged. Family, he said, voice carrying, is complicated. A few uncomfortable laughs. We've all been surprised today, he continued. But what matters is unity, forgiveness, moving forward. He looked directly at me. Maya is young, he said, driven, sometimes impulsive. But she's still my daughter. I felt Daniel stiffen beside me. And families, my father went on, handle disagreements privately. That was the line. I stood before he could finish. No, I said calmly. The room froze again. We don't, I continued. Not when privacy is used to hide harm. My father's smile faltered. This isn't appropriate. You taught me appropriateness, I said. You taught me how to sound reasonable while taking something from someone else. Whispers rippled outward. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. For years, I said, decisions were made about my life as if I were an inconvenience. Today was the first time I declined to accept that quietly. Lauren's fiancé shifted uncomfortably. This isn't revenge, I added. It's correction. My father set his glass down. Sit down, he said softly, dangerously. No. That single word felt heavier than everything else. I turned to the guests. If anyone here feels uncomfortable, I understand. You were invited to a wedding, not a reckoning. But this moment exists whether we acknowledge it or not. I looked back at my father. You don't get to erase me and then ask for forgiveness on your schedule. Silence. Then applause. It started with one person, an aunt on my mother's side. Then another. Not loud, not celebratory. Just acknowledgement. My father's face hardened. He didn't speak to me again that night. The next morning, the fallout began. At 8:03 a.m., I received an email from Michael Henson. Subject: urgent probate matter. At 8:07, a voicemail from my mother. At 8:12, a text from Lauren. We need to talk. Privately, I answered none of them. Instead, Daniel and I sat at our kitchen table, coffee cooling between us. As Rachel Kim joined via speakerphone, they filed a motion to contest the will, Rachel said, claiming undue influence and diminished capacity. As expected, I said. There's more, she added. Your father transferred ownership of 2 subsidiary accounts to Lauren 3 weeks ago. That was before the filing, Daniel said. Yes, Rachel replied. Which makes it a problem. I closed my eyes briefly. He's trying to lock things down, I said. He's panicking, Rachel corrected. Which means he'll make mistakes. Mini Huck. Desperation accelerates exposure. By noon, the calls escalated. Extended family, old friends, business contacts who'd heard something and wanted clarity. I gave none. That afternoon, Daniel received a call at work from my father. He didn't answer. At 6:40 p.m. there was a knock at our door. I knew who it was before I opened it. Evelyn Carter stood there, coat unbuttoned, eyes red but dry. Controlled distress. Maya, she said. We need to talk. I stepped aside. 5 minutes. She entered and looked around our apartment, cataloging the bookshelf, the framed certifications on the wall, the absence of anything she could dismiss as frivolous. You humiliated your father, she said finally. You supported him, I replied. That's not the same. It is, I said. You just didn't feel the cost, she sat. I didn't. Your grandmother was confused, she said. You took advantage. That's a lie. She was vulnerable. So was I said. For years, her voice sharpened. You could have handled this quietly and still been excluded, I said. From the will? From my wedding? From my own name, she flinched. We did what we thought was best, she said. For who? I asked. She didn't answer. Mini hug. Silence is also a confession. When she stood to leave, she paused at the door. This will destroy your relationship with your sister, she said. I met her gaze. That relationship was already built on imbalance. I'm just no longer maintaining it. After she left, Daniel wrapped his arms around me. They're going to escalate, he said. I know. And you're ready? I thought of the file cabinet, the emails, the transfers. The way my father's voice cracked when control slipped. Yes, I said. Because this isn't about winning. It's about not losing yourself, he said. I nodded. That night, Rachel emailed again. Subject, discovery update. Attached with documents I hadn't expected. Bank records, shell accounts, payments made without oversight. Thomas Carter hadn't just moved assets. He'd misrepresented them, and now there was a paper trail. I stared at the screen, pulse steady, because the conflict had crossed a line. This was no longer family drama. This was liability. And my father had just walked into a legal storm he could no longer manage with authority alone. The tables weren't turning. They had already turned. He just hadn't felt the full weight of it yet. The first thing my father did when he realized he was losing control was try to reframe the story. The second thing he did was try to scare me. At 7:18 a.m. on Monday, 3 days after the wedding, I received a formal-looking email from a law firm I didn't recognize. Subject line: Notice of potential legal exposure. I didn't open it right away. I already knew the tactic. Inflate the language, invoke consequences. Hope fear does the work that authority no longer could. I forwarded it to Rachel Kim with a single line. As expected. Her reply came back within minutes. Let them posture. They're bluffing. I believed her. But belief doesn't stop pressure from press. By mid-morning, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Missed calls from relatives who hadn't spoken to me in years. Messages framed as concern that somehow all sounded the same. Your father is devastated. This is tearing the family apart. You've made your point. Why keep pushing? I noticed no one asked if I was okay. Daniel Reyes watched me read through the messages in silence. They're trying to exhaust you, he said. Yes, I replied. They're hoping I'll settle emotionally, even if I don't legally. Will you? I shook my head. I didn't come this far to fold at the discomfort stage. That afternoon, Rachel called with an update that shifted the tone entirely. They filed a civil complaint, she said. Not strong, mostly narrative, but it confirms something useful. What? Your father is officially alleging you interfered with business operations, which opens him up to discovery. I leaned back in my chair. So, he escalated. Yes, Rachel said. Which means we get to look at everything. Mini hook. The moment someone puts a lie on paper, it becomes evidence. By Wednesday, subpoenas were issued, financial records, internal emails, transfer authorizations. Everything Thomas Carter had treated as private territory for decades was now subject to scrutiny, and he did not handle scrutiny well. Lauren Carter called me that night. I almost didn't answer. But avoidance felt like the old version of me. What do you want? I asked. Her voice was tight. Dad's losing it. I know, he hasn't slept. He keeps saying you set him up. I didn't, I said. He set himself up. You don't understand, she snapped. If this goes to court, everything could collapse. I paused. Everything? Or just what you benefit from? Silence. Then, quietly, he said, you always wanted this. I closed my eyes. Lauren, look at me. I can't see you. Then listen, I said. If I wanted revenge, I would have done this years ago. I wanted fairness. He chose war. Her breath hitched. He said, you're trying to take the company. I already own what Grandma left me, I said. I'm not taking anything. I'm just not giving it back to keep him comfortable. You're destroying him, she whispered. No, I replied evenly. I'm letting consequences reach him. She hung up without another word. That night, Daniel and I sat on the couch, shoes off, lights low. Do you ever feel guilty? He asked gently. I thought about it. No, I said. I feel sad. But guilt requires wrongdoing. He nodded. Fair. The next escalation came from an unexpected direction. My mother, Evelyn Carter, requested mediation, not through Rachel, not through lawyers, through my aunt, her older sister Margaret Lewis, who had always played neutral ground. We met at a cafe halfway between our homes. My mother looked smaller than she had weeks ago. Tired. Her control was slipping too. Just quieter. This has gone too far, she said after we sat. It went too far before I spoke, I replied. She clasped her hands. Your father is facing serious exposure. I know he could lose everything. I met her gaze. He risked everything when he decided my exclusion was acceptable. Her eyes filled, but the tears didn't fall. Do you know what people are saying? She asked. They're saying you planned this, that you waited for your wedding to humiliate us. I didn't flinch. People always find a way to blame women who don't stay small. That's not fair, she said. Neither was being erased, I replied. Mini hook. Fairness is always questioned after power shifts. She leaned forward. What do you want? I considered the question carefully. I want my name cleared, I said. I want the false narrative stopped. And I want legal distance. Her brow furrowed. Distance? Boundaries, I corrected. Enforceable ones, she swallowed. Your father won't agree. Then this continues, I said simply. She sat back, defeated. You used to be so accommodating. I used to confuse silence with peace. We parted without resolution. 2 days later, discovery results began arriving. Rachel sent them in batches, undisclosed accounts, misreported valuations, internal emails where my father referred to me as a liability. Reading those words didn't hurt, they clarified. This changes leverage significantly, Rachel said during our call. If this goes before a judge, your father's credibility will be shredded. Will it go that far? I asked. That depends on how desperate he gets, she said. That answer arrived sooner than expected. Friday night, as Daniel and I were eating dinner, his phone rang. Unknown number. He answered, listened, then muted the line. It's your father, he said quietly. He wants to talk. Man to man. I laughed once, without humor. Unmute it, I said. Daniel did. Thomas Carter's voice came through, strained but controlled. Daniel, he said. I think you know this has gone too far. Daniel glanced at me. I nodded. You don't get to define that anymore, Daniel said. I'm worried about Maya, my father continued. This obsession with control. It's not healthy. I leaned forward. This isn't obsession. It's response. He paused. Maya. We can fix this. Quietly. No, I said. Think about your future, he pressed. About children, reputation. I am, I replied. That's why I'm doing this. His tone hardened. You're making enemies. I already had them, I said. They just used to call themselves family. He hung up. Daniel exhaled slowly. That was a threat. Yes, I said. And a weak one. Rachel's email came in an hour later. Subject. Settlement offer received. I opened it. Thomas Carter was offering money. A percentage. Conditional silence. I read it twice. Then I forwarded it back with one line. Rejected. Proceed. If you're listening to this, and you've ever been offered comfort in exchange for your dignity, pause here. Like, subscribe, and ask yourself what silence has already cost you. Because I was done negotiating with fear, and the next move wouldn't be emotional. It would be final. Once the settlement offer was rejected, the tone changed, not publicly. Not yet, but behind the scenes, everything accelerated. Rachel Kim called me first thing Monday morning. Your father retained a forensic accounting firm. That was inevitable, I said. Yes, she replied. But he didn't retain them to review his own exposure. I waited. He's trying to build a counter-narrative, alleging you siphoned influence, pressured your grandmother, manipulated timing. So he's rewriting history. He's trying to, Rachel said. Which tells me something important. What? He's scared. Fear doesn't always look like panic. Sometimes, it looks like overconfidence layered too thick. By midweek, the story began leaking, not in headlines, in whispers. A former colleague messaged me, asking if everything was okay. A distant cousin posted something vague about greed destroying families. Someone forwarded me a screenshot of a private Facebook group where my name was being discussed, like a cautionary tale. I didn't respond. Instead, I went to work. At 30, I had just been promoted to Director of Process Optimization at my firm, overseeing cross-regional operations. My days were built around identifying inefficiencies, tracing cause and effect, eliminating waste. Family systems weren't that different from corporate ones. They just hid their rot better. Mini hook. Once you see patterns clearly, emotion stops being a liability. Rachel and I met Thursday afternoon in her office. The room smelled faintly of coffee and printer toner. Calm, orderly, she slid a folder across the table. This is what your father doesn't know, you know. Inside were internal Carter aggregates emails, uncovered during discovery. Conversations between Thomas Carter and 2 senior managers. Discussions about reallocating funds, about shielding assets before probate finalized. This isn't aggressive tax planning, Rachel said. This is misrepresentation. Criminal? I asked. She nodded once. Potentially. I exhaled slowly. So if this goes to trial, he risks more than losing, she finished. He risks exposure. I thought of the man who used to correct my grammar at the dinner table, who once grounded me for questioning his math. The man who believed authority was the same as accuracy. What's our next move? I asked. Rachel leaned back. We wait. That surprised me. For what? For him to make another mistake, she said. And he will. She was right. He always did. The call came Friday night, from my mother. Her voice sounded brutal, the way glass does before it cracks. Your father's considering stepping down, she said. From what? I asked. The company, she said. Temporarily, I said nothing. He says it might calm things down. Or protect him, I replied. She sighed. You've always been too smart for your own good. I didn't take the bait. Is that all? I asked. There was a pause. Lauren is struggling. That caught my attention. How? She didn't know about the accounts, my mother said quietly. Or the emails. I closed my eyes. So now she's realizing what she inherited, I said. Yes, I felt something then. Not satisfaction, not pity, distance. She made her choices, I said. So did he. When the call ended, I sat in silence for a long time. Daniel joined me on the couch, handing me a glass of water without a word. He'd learned when to speak and when not to. They're fracturing, he said gently. Yes, I replied, and they're blaming me for the cracks that were already there. That weekend, the pressure turned personal. A package arrived at our door. No return address. Inside was a photo album, my childhood, birthdays, holidays, Christmas mornings where I sat slightly apart while Lauren opened gifts. Notes in my mother's handwriting. Look how happy you were. Daniel flipped through it once and stopped. This is manipulation, he said. Yes, I agreed. But it's also evidence. He looked at me. They're trying to remind me who I used to be, I continued. Someone who accepted less. I closed the album and slid it into a drawer. That night, Rachel emailed again. Subject: deposition scheduled. Thomas Carter would be deposed the following Wednesday. Under oath. I slept deeply for the first time in weeks. The deposition was held in a downtown office building. Glass and steel and quiet authority. I wasn't required to attend, but I did. I sat in a separate room, watching the feed. My father looked older, smaller. The confidence that once filled rooms now leaked out between questions. Mr. Carter, Rachel's colleague asked, were you aware of the existence of the second will? No, he said quickly. Then how do you explain this email? The screen filled with his words. Succession adjustment. Contingency planning, he swallowed. That was hypothetical. Was it hypothetical when you transferred funds 3 weeks before the wedding? I was advised. By who? Silence. Mini hook. Silence under oath is never neutral. By the end of the session, his attorney requested a recess, twice. Afterward, Rachel met me in the hallway. He contradicted himself, she said, multiple times. What happens now? She smiled, just slightly. Now we let the wait settle. The fallout was swift. The board of Carter aggregates requested explanations. A regional bank froze a line of credit pending review. My father's temporary step-down became indefinite. Lauren texted me that night. I didn't know, I swear. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, I believe you didn't know everything. I also believe you didn't ask. She didn't respond. A week later, a journalist called. I declined the interview. Rachel supported that decision. Public sympathy isn't strategy. But something else happened that I hadn't planned. People started reaching out, not for gossip, for advice. Women, colleagues, former classmates. Stories poured in of exclusion, of inheritance disputes, of being told to wait their turn while someone else took their place. I listened quietly, and I realized something I hadn't expected. This wasn't just about my family. It never had been. This was about what happens when someone decides they're done being diminished politely, and somewhere behind legal filings and cold emails and forced reckonings, I felt something steady take root. Not revenge. Resolve. Because the more my father fought to preserve a version of the world where he was unquestioned, the more obvious it became that world was already gone. And the next chapter wouldn't be written in courtrooms or depositions. It would be written in consequences that couldn't be negotiated away. He just hadn't reached that part yet. The first real consequence landed on a Tuesday morning, disguised as routine. I was halfway through a budget review at work when Daniel Reyes texted me. Your father's credit line with Midwest Regional Bank has been suspended. I stared at the message longer than necessary. Suspended didn't mean revoked. It meant paused, examined, questioned. In my family, questions were more dangerous than accusations. I forwarded the text to Rachel Kim. Her reply came back quickly. Expected. Banks don't like uncertainty or sworn testimony with contradictions. I set my phone down and returned to the spreadsheet in front of me. Numbers had always calmed me. They didn't pretend to be anything other than what they were. At 4:47 p.m., my phone rang again. This time, it was Lauren Carter. I answered. Hey, she said. Her voice sounded different, quieter, like she wasn't sure what ground she was standing on. What's going on? I asked. Dad got called into an emergency board meeting, she said. They're asking questions he can't answer. I said nothing. They asked about the transfers, she continued. The ones into my accounts. My chest tightened, just slightly. And now they're asking me to explain why I didn't disclose them. I closed my eyes. You didn't disclose them because you didn't know, I said. I should have asked, she whispered. Yes, I said. You should have. That silence again. The kind that stretches because there's nowhere left to hide. Are you trying to destroy him? She asked. No, I replied calmly. I stopped protecting him. There's a difference. She hung up without saying goodbye. That evening, Daniel and I walked through our neighborhood, the air crisp, leaves collecting at the curb. Normal life continuing, while something foundational cracked elsewhere. You okay? He asked. I'm aware, I said. He smiled faintly. That's a very you answer. We stopped at a corner where a house was already decorated for Christmas. Lights strung early, defiant optimism. You know what's strange? I said. I used to imagine confrontation would feel explosive, loud, final. And? Daniel asked. It feels administrative, I said. Like closing accounts. He nodded. Because you're not fighting anymore. You're exiting. That landed. Mini hook. Exiting a toxic system feels threatening to the people who depend on it. 2 days later, my mother, Evelyn Carter, showed up at my office. Not the lobby. The floor. She stood there in her tailored coat, clutching her purse like it was the last familiar thing she had left. My assistant buzzed me. Your mother is here. She says it's urgent. I didn't hesitate. Send her in. She entered slowly, eyes scanning the space. The glass walls. The quiet competence. The framed org chart with my name near the top. You didn't tell us you were promoted, she said. You didn't ask, I replied. She sat down, hands folded too tightly. Thomas is being investigated, she said. I know, not just by the bank, she continued. By the state licensing board. That was new. For what? I asked. Misrepresentation, she said quietly. And possible breach of fiduciary duty. I leaned back in my chair. That's serious, I said. She looked up sharply. This isn't a game, Maya. I know, I said. That's why I didn't start it. Her lips trembled. He could lose the company. He risked that, I said evenly. And your sister, she added. They're looking at her involvement. That one hit differently. Is she being charged? I asked. No, my mother said quickly. Not yet. But they're asking questions. I exhaled slowly. I didn't want this to touch her, I said. But it did, my mother replied. Because she stood where he told her to stand. I nodded once. Acceptance, not agreement. You could stop this, she said suddenly. You could make it go away. I looked at her. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. That you forgive him. Forgiveness doesn't erase evidence, I said. And silence doesn't reverse sworn statements. Her voice cracked. He's your father, and I was his daughter, I replied. Until it became inconvenient. She stood abruptly. You're cold. No, I said. I'm done being warm for people who burn me. She left, without another word. That night, Rachel called. Your father's counsel reached out again, she said. They want mediation. On what terms? I asked. Full asset separation, she replied. He steps away from anything tied to your grandmother's estate. You agree not to pursue further action. I considered it. And the misrepresentation? I asked. That's no longer in your control, she said. That's regulatory. I closed my eyes. So even if I wanted to protect him now, I couldn't. No, Rachel said. That window closed when he lied under oath. I thought of all the times he'd corrected my tone, my posture, my choices. All the times he'd said consequences were for people who didn't plan ahead. Tell them I'll consider it, I said. After Thanksgiving. Rachel paused. That's strategic. Yes, I replied. And honest, because Thanksgiving was the next battlefield. The family had already planned it. Same house, same table, same unspoken rules. And now, everyone knew the truth was sitting in the middle of it. Mini hook. Holidays don't heal fractures. They expose them. The invitation arrived 3 days later. Group text. Carefully worded. We think it would mean a lot to have everyone together this year. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just expectation. Daniel read it over my shoulder. Do you want to go? He asked. I thought about the album, the emails, the deposition transcript. Yes, I said. He raised an eyebrow. Are you sure? Yes, I repeated. Because this time, I won't be seated where they place me. Thanksgiving wasn't about turkey or tradition. It was about who would speak first and who would finally be forced to listen. They thought the worst had already happened. They were wrong. Thanksgiving morning arrived gray and sharp. The kind of weather that stripped things down to their outlines. Daniel Reyes and I drove to my parents' house in silence. Not tense silence, prepared silence. The kind you have before a meeting where the outcome is already determined, even if no one else knows it yet. When we pulled into the driveway, 3 cars were already there. Lauren Carter's, my Aunt Margaret Lewis's, and my father Thomas Carter's, parked closer to the garage than usual. Like proximity could still signal authority. The house looked the same. Wreath on the door, candles in the windows. Normalcy, curated carefully. Inside, the smell of roasted turkey and denial hung thick. My mother, Evelyn Carter, greeted us first. Her smile was practiced, controlled. She hugged me lightly, like I might bruise. I'm glad you came, she said. So am I replied. And I meant it, in a way she didn't expect. Lauren stood near the kitchen island, hands wrapped around a mug she wasn't drinking from. She looked up when she saw me, hesitated, then nodded once. Hi, she said. Hi, I replied. My father stayed in the living room, seated, arms crossed, television muted. The news ticker crawled along the bottom of the screen, talking about markets and regulation. He didn't look at me. Mini hook. Silence can be louder than confrontation when everyone knows why it exists. Dinner was served at 2 o'clock. We sat in the usual places. Daniel beside me, Lauren across, my father at the head of the table. By habit, not agreement. Conversation stayed shallow at first. Weather, traffic, a neighbor's renovation. No one mentioned the investigation. Or the bank. Or the will. Halfway through the meal, my Aunt Margaret cleared her throat. Well, she said, forcing brightness. It's good to have everyone together. My father took that as his cue. We've all been through a lot, he said. And I think it's time to focus on healing. I didn't interrupt. I made mistakes, he continued carefully. But families don't survive by tearing each other apart. Lauren stared at her plate. This isn't about surviving, I said calmly. It's about accountability. My mother's fork paused mid-air. Thomas looked at me. Really looked this time. His eyes were tired, defensive. Calculate. You've made your point, he said. The damage is done. No, I replied. The damage was done quietly, long before I spoke. He shook his head. You could still stop this. I already told you, I said. That option passed. His voice sharpened. You want to see me ruined? No, I said evenly. I want the truth acknowledged. Lauren looked up sharply. What does that even mean? I turned to her. It means admitting that I was excluded intentionally, that assets were moved without transparency, that narratives were shaped to keep me compliant. Silence pressed in again. My father set his napkin down. And if I say that, then we're speaking honestly for the first time, I replied. And if I don't, then this conversation ends, I said. And the next one happens in courtrooms and boardrooms. Without sentiment, my mother whispered my name. Maya. Please, I met her gaze. This isn't cruelty. This is clarity. My father leaned back, jaw tight. You always wanted more. Yes, I said. And you always decided how much I was allowed to want. That landed. Lauren's hands trembled slightly. Dad, she said. Is it true? The accounts? He didn't answer. That was answer enough. Lauren pushed her chair back, standing abruptly. You told me it was normal. That this is how things are done. Thomas looked up at her. Sit down. No, she said. Her voice cracked. I won't. Mini hook. Control fractures fastest when it fails publicly. She looked at me then, eyes glassy. I didn't know everything. But I knew enough. I nodded. That's the hardest part. She left the table, heading toward the hallway. A door closed softly. A moment later, the rest of us sat in the aftermath. My father's voice dropped. You've turned my own family against me. No, I said. You did that when you decided loyalty was obedience. He stared at me. Something unreadable passing through his expression. What do you want? He asked again. This time, I answered without hesitation. I want you to stop fighting the truth, I said. I want you to step back completely. No interference. No narrative shaping. No more attempts to control outcomes you've already lost. And in return? He asked. There is no return, I said. Only consequence. That was when he laughed. Not loudly. Not bitterly. Tired. I don't recognize you anymore, he said. I nodded. That's because I stopped shrinking. Thanksgiving ended early. We left before dessert. In the car, Daniel reached for my hand. You okay? He asked. Yes, I said. Because I didn't beg. I didn't explain. I didn't retreat. You stood, he said. Yes, that night my phone buzzed. A message from Rachel Kim. They've agreed to mediation. Full withdrawal. Asset separation confirmed. Regulatory process continues independently. I closed my eyes. Thanksgiving hadn't fixed anything, but it had clarified everything. My father had one move left, and it wouldn't be quiet. Because when control finally slips, the last thing it tries is spectacle. And I knew, as I turned my phone face down on the nightstand, that whatever came next would be loud enough that even he wouldn't be able to deny it. The spectacle arrived exactly the way Rachel Kim predicted it would. Public. Emotional. Poorly timed. It started with an article. I was in my office on a Thursday morning, reviewing quarterly metrics, when Daniel Reyes forwarded me a link with no commentary. Local business leader, betrayed by daughter, in inheritance dispute. I didn't open it right away. I already knew whose voice would dominate the narrative. When I finally did, it was worse than I expected. My father, Thomas Carter, had given an exclusive interview to a regional business blog. Not a major outlet, just credible enough to circulate. Just small enough to avoid real fact-checking. He talked about loyalty, about tradition, about being blindsided. He said I had been manipulated by outsiders, that I had turned family matters into legal warfare, that my ambition had eclipsed my values. He never mentioned the second will. He never mentioned the transfers. He never mentioned the deposition, but he did mention my wedding. I didn't recognize my own daughter that day, he said in the article. She chose confrontation, over compassion. I read the piece twice, then I closed the tab. Mini hook. When someone lies publicly, they assume you'll stay private. By noon, my phone was buzzing. Former colleagues, distant relatives, even a woman I barely remembered from college. Are you okay? I saw the article. That must be hard. No one asked if it was true. That's how narratives work. They don't need proof. They just need repetition. Rachel called an hour later. He's violating the mediation terms, she said. Public disparagement clause. So we respond, I said. Yes, she replied, but carefully. That afternoon, I sat at my kitchen table with Daniel, my laptop open, a blank document staring back at me. I don't want to rant, I said. You won't, Daniel replied. You'll state facts. I don't want sympathy. You won't get it, he said. You'll get credibility. We wrote it together, a statement, not emotional, not defensive, just accurate. I acknowledged the dispute. I confirmed the existence of a valid second will. I referenced ongoing regulatory reviews without speculation. I declined to comment on personal attacks. I ended with one sentence. I believe accountability and family loyalty are not opposites. Rachel reviewed it, approved it, released it to 3 outlets my father hadn't anticipated. Within hours, the tone shifted. The blog updated its headline. Legal dispute raises questions about Carter Aggregate's leadership. That night, my father called. I didn't answer. Lauren did. She called me instead. He's furious, she said. He thinks you humiliated him again. I corrected the record, I replied. He says you're punishing him. I'm responding, I said. There's a difference, she hesitated. He's planning something. That made me pause. What kind of something? I asked. I don't know, she said. But he's been talking about making things right, his way. That night, I barely slept. Not from fear, from anticipation. When someone who's losing control says they want to make things right, it usually means they're about to confess or combust. The call came the next morning from an unfamiliar number. This is Assistant State Attorney Paul Whitaker, the voice said. I'm calling regarding the ongoing review into Carter Aggregates. I sat up straighter. Yes, I said. We've received additional documentation, he continued, provided voluntarily. I closed my eyes. From whom? I asked, already knowing. From your father, he said. He's requested to amend his previous statements. That was it, the final move. He had flipped. By afternoon, the story broke properly. Not gossip, not blogs, local news. Thomas Carter admits to undisclosed transfers amid a state dispute. I watched the clip once. My father stood at a podium, eyes hollow, voice steady but thin. He spoke about pressure, about mistakes, about misunderstanding legal boundaries. He didn't apologize, but he didn't deny it either. Mini hook. Confessions don't restore power. They redistribute it. By evening, Rachel called with confirmation. He's cooperating fully, she said. The board has requested his resignation. And the investigation? I asked. Ongoing, she replied. But his cooperation limits exposure. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. It was over. Not cleanly. Not kindly, but definitively. Daniel came home late, dropped his bag, and sat beside me. You okay? He asked. Yes, I said. And no, he nodded. That track, Lauren texted me that night. He resigned. I didn't reply immediately. Then I sent back one line. I hope he finally rusts. She didn't respond. 2 days later, my mother came back. No announcement. No warning. She stood in the doorway, smaller than I'd ever seen her. He's moving out, she said. I didn't ask where. He says he needs time, she continued, to understand how things got here. I studied her face. And you? I asked. She swallowed. I'm tired of understanding things too late. That was the closest she came to an apology. Before she left, she hesitated. You didn't have to do it this way, she said. I met her gaze. I did. After she left, Daniel poured us wine. We sat quietly. Do you want to say something? He asked. Not tonight, I said. But later, when I was alone, I opened my laptop again. If you're listening to this story and you've ever watched someone try to rewrite history to avoid accountability, pause here. Like, subscribe, leave a comment if you've lived through something similar. Silence survives because people think they're alone. I didn't need revenge anymore. What I felt now was something colder and steadier, closure, because my father had finally told the truth, not because he wanted to, but because he had no other move left. And who gets to rebuild? Power doesn't disappear when it collapses, it redistributes. That was the first thing I learned in the weeks after my father, Thomas Carter, resigned. The second was that people reveal their truest loyalties when there's nothing left to gain. The morning after the news broke, my inbox filled with messages that felt carefully timed. Former executives who had once deferred to my father now wanted to clarify past misunderstandings. Board members I'd never spoken to directly asked if I was open to a conversation. Distant relatives suddenly remembered birthdays they'd skipped for years. I didn't answer most of them, not out of bitterness, out of discernment. Rachel Kim and I met that Friday in her office, sunlight cutting across the conference table. "The board wants you involved," she said. "Not symbolically, practically." "In what capacity?" I asked. She slid a document toward me. "Interim oversight consultant. No voting power. No ceremonial title. Full access." "They want stability," Rachel said. "And credibility. You have both." I scanned the page. "They're afraid of further exposure." "Yes," she replied. "And they know you won't protect what shouldn't be protected." I considered it carefully. "I'll do it," I said. "With conditions." Rachel smiled. "Of course you will." The conditions were simple: full transparency, no family interference, and Lauren Carter removed from any financial authority until the review concluded. Lauren found out that evening. She came to see me in person this time. She looked different, less polished, less certain. "I heard," she said. "Yes," I replied. "You didn't tell me," she added. "I wasn't asking permission," I said. She sat across from me, hands folded tightly. "They asked me to step back," she said. "Temporarily. That's what accountability looks like," I said. "It doesn't mean guilt. It means responsibility." She nodded slowly. "Dad says you're trying to replace him." I met her gaze. "I'm trying to prevent further damage." She looked down. "I don't know who I am without him making decisions." That wasn't an accusation. It was a confession. "You'll find out," I said. "But not by standing where he stood." She left quietly. The first day I walked into Carter Aggregates headquarters as an external consultant, no one spoke. Not out of hostility, out of recalibration. People didn't know where to place me anymore. That suited me. I spent hours reviewing contracts, internal processes, compensation structures. I asked questions my father never had. I listened to people he'd never listened to. By the end of the week, inefficiencies surfaced like bruises. By the end of the month, reforms were in motion. Not dramatic ones, structural ones. I wasn't there to punish. I was there to correct. At home, life felt strangely calm. Daniel Reyes noticed it first. "You're lighter," he said one night as we cooked dinner. "I'm aligned," I replied. The difference mattered. We talked about things we'd put off. Travel, children, what we wanted, without pressure. For the first time, my future didn't feel like a response. It felt intentional. My mother, Evelyn Carter, called less often. When she did, she didn't ask me to fix things. She asked how I was. That shift mattered too. One afternoon, she told me she'd started therapy. "I don't know who I am without managing everyone else's comfort," she admitted. I understood that more than she knew. 3 weeks into my role, Rachel called with an update. "The regulatory review is closing," she said. "They're issuing fines, not charges." "And my father?" I asked. "He's barred from holding executive positions for 5 years," she replied. "Voluntary agreement." I exhaled slowly. "That's fair," I said. It was. I didn't need his punishment to be catastrophic. I needed it to be real. The final meeting with the board happened on a rainy Thursday afternoon. They thanked me. Formally. Awkwardly. One of them asked if I'd consider staying on. "No," I said. "This was never about taking over." "Then what was it about?" he asked. I answered without hesitation, making sure the truth didn't get buried again. That night, I stood alone in our apartment. City lights stretching below. I thought about the girl I used to be. The one who believed endurance was loyalty, that silence was maturity, that love required shrinking. She had survived. But she hadn't been right. What came next wasn't reconciliation. It was distance, with clarity. And that, I learned, was its own form of peace. Chapter 10 didn't end with forgiveness. It ended was stability, and that was enough. The quiet that followed stability was unfamiliar. I had spent most of my adult life moving from one form of tension to another, mistaking motion for safety. Now, with no immediate crisis demanding my attention, I felt something closer to stillness. Not relief. Awareness. The kind that forces you to notice what you've been ignoring. Daniel Reyes noticed it too. "You're restless," he said one Sunday morning as we sat at the kitchen counter, coffee untouched. "I'm unused to silence," I replied. "It feels unfinished." "Or earned," he said. I considered that. Work slowed into a steady rhythm. My role with Carter Aggregates ended exactly when it was supposed to. Clean exit. No lingering ties. The board sent a formal thank you letter. I archived it without ceremony. Lauren Carter kept her distance. We texted occasionally. Logistics. Neutral updates. No intimacy. No hostility. Just space. That space told me more than any argument ever had. One afternoon, she asked to meet. We chose a neutral place. A cafe near the river. Public but quiet enough to talk. She arrived early. That alone was new. "I've been thinking," she said after we ordered. "I figured," I replied. She took a breath. "I didn't realize how much of my life was built around staying favored." I said nothing. "I thought if I stayed aligned, I'd stay safe," she continued. "I didn't see how conditional it was." I nodded once. "That's how favoritism works. It feels like security, until it doesn't." She looked at me carefully. "Do you hate me?" "No," I said honestly. "But I don't trust you yet." That landed hard. She swallowed. "That's fair." We sat in silence for a moment, watching the river move past without urgency. "I don't know what our relationship looks like now," she said. "Neither do I replied. "But it won't look like before." She nodded. "I wouldn't want it to." That was progress. Not healing, but honesty. My father, Thomas Carter, didn't reach out. I heard about him through other people. He'd sold the house, downsized, started attending meetings he used to mock. He told acquaintances he was focusing on self-reflection. I didn't ask for details. Distance wasn't punishment, it was boundary. My mother, Evelyn Carter, reached out more, sometimes just to talk about small things. A book she was reading, a recipe she'd failed at. Her voice sounded less managed, more uncertain. "I think I spent my life smoothing over conflict," she said once, and forgot to ask whether it deserved to be smooth. I understood that too. One evening, Daniel and I sat on the couch. Papers spread out between us. Travel plans, a potential move, conversations we'd postponed while everything else burned. "What do you want next?" he asked. The question didn't feel loaded. That was new. "I want a life that isn't built around reaction," I said. "I want forward motion that isn't fueled by proving anything." He smiled. "That sounds like freedom." "Yes," I said. "It does." A week later, I received a letter in the mail, handwritten, from my father. I didn't open it immediately. I let it sit on the counter for a full day. When I finally did, it was short. No excuses. No defenses. He wrote that he'd spent years believing control was the same as care. That losing everything he'd protected had forced him to examine what he'd neglected. That he didn't expect forgiveness, but wanted me to know he was trying to understand. He ended with one sentence. "I'm learning too late, but I am learning." I folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer, not as closure, as record, because accountability doesn't require reconciliation, and growth doesn't demand access. The last thing that surprised me was how little satisfaction I felt. There was no victory lap, no surge of triumph, just a quiet certainty that I had chosen myself without cruelty. That mattered more than applause. One night, as Daniel and I prepared for bed, he asked me something I hadn't expected. "Do you miss them?" he asked. I thought about it. "I miss who I thought they were," I said. "Not who they chose to be." He nodded. "That's grief," he said. "Yes," I replied. "But it's clean grief, not confused." That difference mattered. As the year closed, invitations came and went. Holiday gatherings adjusted. Traditions rewritten or abandoned. I didn't rush to replace them. Some spaces are meant to stay open. It brought clarity. And clarity, I learned, is what makes the next chapter possible. Because when you stop fighting to be included, you finally get to decide where you belong. The year ended quietly. No dramatic reunion. No last-minute reversing. No moment where everything snapped neatly into place. Instead, life settled into something honest. Daniel Reyes and I moved in early January. Not far, just enough to signal a new chapter, without pretending geography could fix history. A smaller place, fewer rooms, more intention. We hosted our first dinner there, with friends who had watched everything unfold from a respectful distance. No family politics, no subtext. Just people who showed up because they wanted to. That mattered more than I expected. Work continued. I accepted a new role 3 months later. Vice President of Strategic Integration at a mid-sized firm expanding nationally. 32 years old, 180 employees under my purview. Real responsibility. No legacy attached. When I signed the contract, I didn't think of my father. That was how I knew I was free. Lauren Carter reached out in the spring. Not with drama. Not with guilt. With effort. She told me she'd enrolled in a graduate program. Finance, but not construction. Her choice. She said she was learning what it meant to make decisions without checking if someone else approved first. I don't expect us to be close, she said during our call. I just didn't want distance to mean silence forever. I appreciate that, I replied. And I did. We met for coffee once a month after that. No forced intimacy. No pretending. Just two adults learning who they were without hierarchy. My mother, Evelyn Carter, kept going to therapy. She stopped asking me to fix things. She stopped defending my father when his name came up. One afternoon, she said something I never thought I'd hear. I should have protected you more. I didn't rush to comfort her. I let the truth sit where it belonged. My father never asked to meet. He sent one more letter, months later. Longer this time, more reflective, still careful. I didn't reply. Not because I was angry. Because not every chapter needs a response. What surprised me most wasn't how much my life changed. It was how little noise it made when it did. No applause, no reckoning scenes, no victory speeches, just alignment. One evening, Daniel and I sat on the balcony, the city humming below us. We talked about children, not timelines, possibilities. Do you ever think about what kind of parent you'd be? He asked. Yes, I said. All the time. What kind? One who doesn't confuse control with love, I replied. One who doesn't make belonging conditioning. He nodded. He'd be good at that. I believed him. And I believed myself, because the real inheritance I reclaimed wasn't money, or assets, or control over a company. It was authorship. I stopped letting other people define what my success meant, what my loyalty looked like, how much space I was allowed to occupy. I learned that exclusion doesn't always come with slammed doors. Sometimes it comes with smiles, and explanations, and traditions that quietly erase you. And I learned that revenge doesn't have to be loud to be effective. Sometimes it looks like refusing to carry what was never yours. If you've listened this far, and you've lived inside a family dynamic where love was conditional, where favoritism was framed as fairness, where silence was demanded in the name of peace, pause here, like the story if it resonated. Subscribe if you want more stories about boundaries, delayed justice, and choosing yourself without cruelty. And if you're comfortable, leave a comment. Not with what you endured, but with what you're no longer willing to accept. Because the lesson isn't that family betrays you. The lesson is that you don't have to stay where your dignity is negotiable. You don't need permission to step out of a system that thrives on your compliance. And you don't need revenge to reclaim your power. Sometimes the most decisive payback is living so clearly that no one gets to rewrite you again. That's where my story ends. Not with forgiveness, not with victory, but with choice. And that, finally, was mine.